Hey guys, Dave and Skidge here. Grab your favorite laser gun, put on your Sunday's best, and get ready to follow us back down the rabbit hole. Did you know at any given time in the United States today, there's anywhere from 50,000 to 100,000 fugitives on the loose? Think about that for a second. That's a pretty large and somewhat abstract number. Pretty alarming if you ask me. Many of these fugitives have committed some of the most heinous crimes you can think of. Murder, rape, terrorism, kidnapping, and child molestation. In order to combat these level of criminal that is inherent to civilization, civilization has no choice but to breed a biological response to flush out these criminals. A sort of anti-hero to track and hunt this vicious virus that has escaped into society's healthy membrane. We take you into a world of hunters, protectors, and enforcers. Highly trained, highly specialized men and women entrusted by the U.S. government to be precise, restrained, and exacting in all that they do.
But this isn't the movies, folks. There is no clever lighting. There is no constantly regenerating army of bad guys to vaporize without remorse or consequence. Criminals don't always operate in the white and black. Gray is the color they wear best. Injustice doesn't always come in the form of a hangman's noose. There will be car chases. There will be gunfights. There will be kidnappings. There will be the sound of a door in some forgotten ghetto, splintering beneath a SWAT team member's boot. But it's not what you think, and the story isn't always told the way it went down, because there are monsters that exist and thrive among us. Living under an assumed identity, to the untrained eye, these shapeshifters, they're indistinguishable from you or I. And somebody has to track them down and bring them in. This is the story of a government-sanctioned monster hunter. Ladies and gentlemen, we give you Kevin Connolly.
In 2001 in Albania, there was a secret police officer by the name of Marjan Raku, who was 27 years old, who stalked a 15-year-old girl in the town of Tirana, harassed her for several months, and assaulted her. Her mother, who was a school teacher, would escort her to school to keep her safe from this above-the-law officer. One day, in broad daylight, he gunned them both down with his service weapon. He absconded from Albania and was on the run for 10 years. He was convicted in absentia of both homicides and sentenced to 2 life sentences in Albania. I began to work the case 4 years in when it was brought to my attention that he might be in North America. Working with the family, I conducted an investigation for 6 years, which led me to Bronx, New York, where I was able to locate Raku living under an assumed name in the Bronx at his residence. I gained the assistance of the U.S.MARSHAL Service Fugitive Task Force in New York. We went to his residence wearing NYPD uniforms with a wanted poster of a Hispanic male who was wanted that was living in the building. Knocked on the door, 6 a.m. one morning in 2010, and to my surprise was greeted at the door by Marjan Raku. Showed him the wanted poster, asked if he knew who the person was. He steps outside, willing to assist. And once he was out on the stoop, myself and an immigration agent took him to the ground, placed him in custody. My name's Kevin Connolly. I'm a supervisor with the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force, and this is Intangible Adventures.
Good to have you on the show today. Welcome.
Welcome, man.
Thanks for having me.
Glad you're here, man.
So, Kevin, what is a U.S. Marshal?
It's the oldest federal law enforcement agency in the country. It started with the 13 colonies in 1789. They needed someone to enforce federal law. And that's the history of it. But as it's changed over the years, we've kind of been known as fugitive hunters throughout the country, and that's what I do. We have an expertise in finding people, and that's what I've been able to do for almost 30 years now.
So you're a fugitive hunter. He's not a U.S. Marshal. He's a fugitive hunter.
Yeah, you're a government sanctioned, essentially bounty hunter, but you don't get a personal bounty.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you just get the reward out of knowing you bring injustice to some crime victim, some murder victim, some rape victim, a child victim, a sex offender. That's kind of why I think most of us do it. There's a lot more to the U.S. Marshal Service. We protect the federal judiciary.
Yeah, I was going to say, what is the U.S. Marshal? What do you guys, other than fugitive, what do you guys specialize in?
There are U.S. Marshals in every federal courthouse in America, so you need someone to receive and process every federal arrest from the FBI, ATF, DEA, Homeland Security. So they receive and process those defendants, take them to court, find housing for them, almost like a federal sheriff per se. Then you also have federal fugitive investigations. So every one of those persons that are convicted of a firearms offense, drug offense in the federal system, when they violate probation one day down the road, as many of them unfortunately do, the U.S. Marshal Service is tasked with finding them and bringing them back to the court. We have a witness protection program that was taken over from the FBI many years ago to ensure that those witnesses that are at high risk are able to testify freely and without
With sanctuary.
fear of getting killed. So we have that program, which is a whole other division of the Marshal Service. We have a national tactical team, which is our special operations group. They handle all the high terrorism trials, Zacharias Moussaoui, World Trade Center cases.
Oh, you guys were there?
Yes, we have to deal with those. So think about, the Oklahoma City bombers. The U.S. Marshal Service has to provide security during those high-risk trials all around the country. So those are some of the things. What I've put through most of my career, my eggs into the one basket, which I've loved for the better part of 30 years, is fugitive investigation, and that's state, local, and federal fugitives. I'm blessed to run a Marshal Service Fugitive Task Force, which has men and women from federal, state, and local agencies that come together. We specially deputize them and go after what we call the worst of the worst around the country. We get money from Congress to do this. So
that's it. Here's the thing: the FBI, everybody sees the TV shows and the movies, right? And they see the FBI busting door, people in handcuffs, but it's not the FBI. I mean, you work with the FBI, I'm sure, in some cases, but it's the U.S. Marshals. Not a lot of people know about the U.S. Marshals.
No.
Or exactly what they specialize in, how much, and we're going to get into that right now, is how did you become a U.S. Marshal?
So I'm from Virginia, went to Radford University, and I wanted to get into law enforcement. I got a criminal justice degree, and I was looking at what jobs I'd be interested in. I like to hunt, deer hunt, you name it.
Hunt animals.
It's hide and seek.
If I can hunt it, I want to do it.
It started with animals, and now it's people.
Hide and seek's fun as a kid, right? But you get to do that with humans that are thinking. It's just hide and seek for adults with guns, basically. Who wouldn't want to do that?
With, the stakes are a little bit higher.
I guess you could call it that.
Yeah,
okay.
The stakes are a little higher on that game.
So you went to Radford.
Right. So it just, I applied for an internship with the Marshal Service and got it. And luckily, for me, they were hiring back in '89. And I've had a good 30-year run this August. So.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Thank you
for your service.
Yeah, man, that's amazing. 30 years of knocking down doors, Dave.
Yeah, 30 years of splintering wood and sorting through, all sorts of... Essentially, at some points, you have to work as a detective, right? I mean...
Right, and just it's important for the public to know that what we do is the detectives are making the cases. They're doing all the hard work initially. They have the tough tough job of working the crime scene with kids with, their throats cut or shot or, horrific scenes that we don't need to see that. We don't have to see that. They charge the person that they feel did it, and we help them catch the person. We bring them to the detective for them to continue to interview. So ours is a separate investigation. So the detectives and the federal agents that are, you mentioned the FBI, they do a great job of organized crime, counterterrorism. They're keeping us safe from those threats from abroad and internally as well. We're all part of the Department of Justice. So you have the FBI, you have the U.S. Marshals, you have the DEA and the ATF. So each of us, one does, guns and gangs, one does drugs, money laundering, one does counterterrorism, organized crime, bank robberies, and we do fugitives is our swim lane. So there is a knack for finding people, and it's not just the U.S. Marshal Service. We have men and women from the state, local agencies that all have their expertise. They've been dealing with these guys, right? For years. And yesterday they shot and killed somebody. They may know more about that person than we do. So they're pulling through their databases. We're pulling through ours before we hit the street.
It's a huge collaboration.
It's not one person that does it. Without these task forces that we have, we would never be as efficient as we are. We couldn't bring the amount of justice that we do every day.
Yeah. What's the training like when you go through to become a U.S. Marshal?
So there's legal training, which is paramount. Look, we all love our Constitution. This is the best country in the world, and I'll say that. We see a lot on the news. We just see a lot on the news where sometimes we get it wrong, and that's going to happen. Somebody is inevitably going to be wrongfully convicted, and it's a tragedy. But I can tell you that many, many, many more go free that might be guilty, that the proof isn't there, so you don't make it. In many countries around the world, you could point at someone and say, that's the person that did it, and they're going to lock you up, figure it out later.
So be hung.
Yeah.
And so it's I want people not to lose faith. There's a lot of negative things going on TV or the newspaper, but I always say after we catch the fugitive, I hope he didn't do it. I don't have any ill feelings towards these men and women that made some bad decisions, unless they're straight out evil. They do something horrific to a child, or shoot a police officer, or do something to someone. If the proof isn't there, they get to walk, and that's just our system of justice. And we will, we're not going to. Our job is just to find them on the warrant safely, bring them to the detectives and the courts, and let the courts sort it out.
So in the training, you're taught the law system.
Nobody's going to. You have a right to be secure in your home, and nobody's going to kick in your door without reasonable, without probable cause, without a warrant in hand, without consent, without a search warrant. It's just not going to happen. I'm just not going to do it to you, your family. I'm not going to do it to me, civil liability wise. It's just not anything the U.S. Marshal Service do. If we have to hold the address and get a search warrant, that's what we're going to do. So if we get consent from the mom, hey, look, we're not trying to hurt him. Just send him down.
Yeah.
We're going to have to get a search warrant and come back. You try to be respectful to these folks, and they end up getting the person a lot safer that way. The academy that we go to is the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Brunswick, Georgia. That's about a 4-month school where you have legal firearms, tactical training, building searches, those kinds of things. So, and when you come out, it's really on-the-job training at a federal courthouse somewhere in America where you're processing, moving prisoners around, you're easing into working fugitive investigations.
What was the first case or the first assignments that helped you cut your teeth as a U.S. Marshal?
Well,
like fresh out of the academy.
I
got you that experience that you really needed. You talked about it being on the job learning. Like, what are those?
Sure. We all make mistakes, right? When you're new at your job. Fortunately, they didn't cost me to be harmed. I mean, you see a bad guy, you want to go get him, right? I've learned Do it with a team. Do it with a highly trained team. Bring your shields. Take positions of cover. Call the guy out. We have all day to get hurt. Why rush into a house where somebody that might be on drugs, that doesn't want to go back to prison, sitting there with a gun waiting for you, right? So, in the old days, I'd be chasing them, tackling them, rolling around with them, and then waiting for the backup to get there. That's just because, and we evolved through training. But I would have to say, cutting my teeth in the D.C. area, I absolutely loved working the D.C. Lorton Reformatory escapes. They were hands down.
Sounds like the type of place where they cranked out a lot of like legends, like
To
Whiskey
me, it
a
sounds
Go-Go.
like Arkham Asylum.
Yes, exactly, dude.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like, hey,
which is the asylum that Bat Joker escaped from.
Yeah. You're like, hey, Connolly, he's fresh out. Send him over to the Lorton Reformatory.
Where's he from? Oh, Lorton, and you're like, oh, Lorton.
Yeah. Have fun down there, buddy.
Well, they were, the D.C. Department of Corrections, right? They're overwhelmed. They do a great job. The men and women, first and foremost. It's a tough job. Imagine being a correctional officer in a facility with,
Shit,
That's
man.
overpopulated.
it's just tough. You're trying to treat the people humanely, get them what they want, and
But these
not.
are also savage people.
Well, they don't have restraint. A lot of them, the ones that are, they impulse control problems. Am I going to get shanked today? I couldn't imagine being on the inside every day with some of these folks. From my perspective, when they escaped, which unfortunately at the Lorton Reformatory was more often than they would have liked, and again, it's not the staff fault per se. Back in the day, it was that prison was never meant to hold the types of people they put in there.
Got it.
It was built back in the days, my understanding, as a drug and alcohol rehab facility, as D.C. was looking for places to house convicted inmates. They put them in Lorton, Virginia, and those repeat offenders figured a way to get out. And when they got out, it was my job to conduct a fugitive investigation and to find them, and that was some of the most fun I've ever had on the job. Really learned a lot.
You were just popping fugitive or guys that were escaping.
It's just
left
like
and right.
every other day there's a new fugitive on the loose.
Yeah.
Wasn't that often, but every few months, one would get out of minimum security. Maybe
We got another one.
I probably
We got a
worked.
runner. Send Connolly.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier how the public watches TV and they think it's an easy thing. Let's just go to his house, knock on the door, let's get him. What are we going to do for lunch?
Yeah.
Who's getting blown away today in this episode?
Yeah.
And
Let's go. Don't even think about
Set
it.
off some claymores,
Yeah,
shoot up
yeah,
some
yeah.
cars.
No, not like
Hunt
that.
him
We're
down.
gonna
Yeah.
We're gonna.
But in
spray
the movies,
bullets.
it's pretty regular, right?
right. I mean, you've seen The Fugitive. That was a good movie. It was.
Great movie.
I think the Chicago Marshal's office actually had some input on that, but there was some humor in it. I don't care, when they're asking. And the good thing about our job, when you catch them, they're not mad at us for tracking them down, right? I didn't bring the charges on.
Do they talk shit to you?
No, they're like, "How'd you catch me?
Oh wow.
How'd you find me?
Damn.
Who dined me out?" We're like, "Look, I can't tell you that.
You can't hide.
Just
from,
good investigative
Just
work."
know that I'm good at what I do.
You can't hide from Kevin, dude.
Kevin, do they have a nickname for you? Do you have a nickname that you've cultivated in your 30 years?
None that I'm going to discuss here. No, I don't have a nickname. No.
My God.
Oh,
There's
man.
got to be a name, dude.
Well, none that you will discuss.
Whoa, like
They call him Quick Draw.
yeah, Operation Red Dragon.
No, I'm sure that we have a great in law enforcement. You love to cut up. You love to have fun with your team
You guys
members.
love the best of it.
We
Cut up.
it's a lot of fun, but the fugitive investigations could last a few hours if you're lucky. They could last a few days, months, years. My longest one was 6 years, and there's still one that's been out 20 years that I haven't caught up with. So, but the Lorton escapes, I was able to get all of the ones that escaped while I was working them.
How many do you think you got?
Probably 15
That's
or so.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
dude.
So,
That's a lot
but
of fugitives.
But the most elaborate escape conspiracies usually come along with the hire of the security. So, in other words, if they were in minimum security, for instance, we would pull the reel-to-reel tapes, the phone tapes back in the day were reel-to-reel. They're not digitally recorded now. And all the inmates know that they're being monitored. So I would pull the reel-to-reel tapes after the escape and try to find some discussion prior to the escape about, maybe who was going to pick them up.
You find some pretty rich stuff on there, Kevin?
There's some interesting conversations,
Please tell us, Kevin.
when someone's incarcerated, what they're talking about with their girlfriends or significant others. But you pour through that, you look at you want to listen to the substantive stuff, like and the one escape. It's a little humorous, but it was part of the
Investigation.
part of the conviction. And that tape I found
That's part of your.
was the escapee to his girlfriend a few days before, and it was, "Baby, come down this gravel road, park the car there, wait for me. I'll come meet you, and bring some wine, and don't wear no panties." And that was the entire plan, and I was able to use that to get that girl to give his location up, and she didn't have to go to do a federal assisting an escape, which is a 5-year federal offense. And usually it's, do you want to go to federal prison or you want to tell me where he is? And so that most of the time we have had to charge significant others for escape conspiracies.
Like eating a fugitive.
Yeah, I mean, picking them up from prison, getting them an apartment, those kinds of things. So those were our quick hits. We'd usually catch them in D.C. or PG County, Maryland, where they were from, to the big one. I had one that took several months.
Would you say that's when you fell in love with your job, or?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
yeah,
when
that
you
was.
fell in love with being a U.S. Marshal.
Because you were good at it, right?
Well,
You found a.
you can always do better, but I tell you, I did really appreciate the investigation, the manhunt, the bringing justice to the crime victims, particularly when we got into the state and local murder, rape, robbery, child molestation, which when I first started, we were just doing the federal escapes, the federal probation, helping ATF, DEA with their fugitives. And those are all neat. But when you get to many times when the funeral's not even over yet, you apprehend the guy that is charged with killing that person. And there's been more than once where they've actually been able to announce, the detectives have been able to tell the family at the funeral, hey, by the way, this isn't going to bring your loved one back, but the marshals just caught the guy that's charged with killing him. So that's, you go home at the end of the day, I don't know how many jobs that you can go home with that satisfaction.
I mean,
So
that's pretty legendary. Like,
That's powerful.
I can't even imagine that. Like you put somebody, behind bars that did a heinous act, and you go home. That's a good day's work right there.
Yeah, that's a hell of a good
That's
day's
fulfilling.
week.
That's got to be. There's nothing better.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, though, we don't know if they did it. There's evidence, and everyone has a right to a trial by jury in this country, and that's, law enforcement gets it wrong. Think about it. The witnesses, what did they see? They mean well. Did they see what they saw when they were under duress? Is there physical evidence? Those are all things that, there's video out there nowadays. You want to make sure you get the right person before he's charged. So, yeah, we catch the one that they charged. Most of the time, there's a conviction, a plea in the case. Occasionally, they'll dismiss because they realize somebody else did it. And it's just the way the system is.
But when you guys are going through these and you guys are doing your homework, though. This isn't
Right.
just like you guys come prepared. This address, everything is completely calculated.
Yeah.
It's not just like, oh, we got a tip let's go knock on the door.
U.S. Marshals are, from what I gather from my previous research as well as talking to you, incredibly restrained and efficient.
Well, I appreciate that. I will say, and I have known many men and women in the U.S. Marshal Service and many state troopers, local, state, county officers, that they are, think about this, you choose a career where you have a high risk, you're going after people that are drinking and drugging and carrying guns. And allegedly shooting people. Everyone we target is usually a recidivist. They've been in and out of the system time and time again, and occasionally go after a first-time murder, a teenager or something.
Habitual offenders.
Yeah, but these habitual offenders, I mean, they're dangerous people. So you leave in the morning knowing that you're going to go after some of these folks. There could be increased danger, and not just getting hurt or killed, but then also a civil liability if you have to use, physical force, deadly force, those kinds of issues that you have, being second guessed. It's sometimes, people just go get a job, working at Lowe's. Why would you want that additional liability? And I think the reason people do it is because they want to bring justice. They really do. And I think that's why everybody on our task force chooses to come over to us.
Yeah.
They could go to court with prisoners. They could serve process. They choose to go out, hit the streets, and look for these folks and bring
Clean
justice.
streets,
So they're willing to take those risks. And occasionally, unfortunately, they have to use force to save a life or to prevent a loss of a life.
But from what we've, just from talking to you and everything, is we've gotten that the restraint
Right.
is so embedded into your guys' DNA because you don't want that backlash.
Right. And, we love people. I mean, there's no one on my team. I don't get complaints. Think about the amount of doors we go into every day, or we knock at. And we're going to knock and announce. We're going to ask for someone to come to the door. We're going to explain. U.S.MARSHAL's with a warrant, with an arrest warrant. Is John home? You're probably going to get lied to. You just have to say, ma'am, we saw him upstairs earlier. Can you just tell him to come down? We try to be as calm as we can. Guy bails out a window, you chase him down, you tackle him, the handcuffs go on. That's it. This isn't Hollywood where somebody's getting an extra kick in. Yes. Nobody on our fugitive task forces does that. And it's not because people have iPhones out there. It's because our job is to catch you. If you're going to hurt us or try to hurt us, we're going to protect ourselves. But if you're just running, we're going to roll you up. We're going to dust you off. Why'd you run? We're going to take you to court.
What are you running for?
Yeah, we're going to let the judge know you ran. I mean, but so they don't let you out on bond. We have to go get you again. but we're we're not in the business of trying to get an extra punch in. That doesn't happen.
You're not there to harm people.
It doesn't happen. We're there to help. If people understand that you're there to bring justice to victims and to go get these people. If nobody pursues these people, no justice can be served for those families. And that's what we always remember. And some people, I have to pull them off the street. They'll stay out for 30 some hours. They don't want to go home. When it's a cop shooter, we'll stay out as long as it takes. But at some point, as a supervisor, you have to get people rested and rotate people out because it starts to get dangerous. They don't want to go home. But we've had a couple of those cases, which are the toughest. One was a 13-hour stretch. We were able to bring justice to that wife and family, a state trooper that was murdered a couple of years ago down in Richmond. So when you meet that family and you get to introduce your team to that family and say, it was our greatest honor to help catch the person that took your husband.
I want to know one thing, and how you are able to stay objective. You know what these people are accused of, right?
Right.
So if I just know me, if I'm about to go into a door knowing this guy raped and murdered a 9-year-old girl.
How do you not make it personal?
How do you not make that personal? You have kids. Like, how do you guys not make that personal? For me, that would be extremely
And you're a deeply
tough.
empathetic person, Kevin.
Well, it's because you choose this profession, right? You're a professional. Your job is to catch that person and let the courts sort it out. And the minute you start, you disengage. It's actually healthier for us. The detectives have to see that. They have to, they have to look at the body. They have to process the evidence. They have to sit there and cry, which I know detectives have cried looking at children's crime scenes. We don't have to really deal with that. So it's actually healthier for us just to think about the fugitive hunt and think about protecting ourselves when we're making the arrest and protecting the public and protecting the fugitive. I mean, contrary to what Hollywood shows, look, nobody wants to shoot somebody. I can tell you that firsthand. Nobody's high-fiving, because when someone makes you take a life, it's a huge deal. There's no high-fiving. There's no way to go. Been there, seen it, and it's all about, is everybody okay? You know, that's the main thing. Is everybody okay? That person made a decision to do something that caused you to use deadly force. Now, we're going to provide the first aid to that person
Immediately.
We're gonna help them. That's another thing people don't realize. That if you have to use force, and as soon as that danger is over, you're going to start providing first aid to that person. It's not up to us whether they live or die. It's up to law enforcement shooting to stop the immediate action that's in front of them, that's unfolding. There's a weapon. There's a gun. There's a machete. There's
Absolutely.
someone going to die if you don't take action.
Yes.
And unfortunately, if you hesitate, it could cost you your life,
Your partner.
one of your team, or a member of the public. And you, in fact, if you didn't act, you could be charged with failure to act. So when that happens, and these are split-second decisions, guys. I mean, it's
With a weapon.
It's a split
Like, this
second.
isn't the fucking movies.
Yeah, there's worlds of decisions, complex,
Right.
like huge major decisions that are going to change the outcomes of your life, other people's lives, people you don't know. Depends who's around.
And the thing is, after the shooting's over, and even if the Commonwealth Attorney or the District Attorney says it's a good shoot, person was armed, they were making an overt action, that's just the first stage. Then there's an internal investigation. Then you have a Department of Justice, civil rights investigation. You're just, and it's okay. I'm glad we have those in America. It's
Just know this.
no
No cop wants to just pop off.
right.
No law enforcement.
Yeah, no law enforcement in general.
is not going to work like, damn, I can't wait to use my firearm.
Well, I just want to say this, that are there bad cops? Absolutely. Are there bad teachers? Are there bad in any profession, right? The overwhelming majority of them are in this business for the right reasons, and they don't want to harm somebody. If somebody's a bully that wants a badge and that makes them powerful, they don't need to be in law enforcement. They don't need to be in law enforcement. And when they do,
They'll be rooted out.
when they do something that violates somebody's rights, or they harm somebody they're not supposed to harm, prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law. Let's get rid of them, because it's a bad. We left Great Britain many years ago because, they could kick in your door, do what they wanted to you back in the day. And this country is founded on a constitution and laws, and we're not going to violate that for anybody. So I'm proud of the men and women I work with, and I don't need to speak any more to that. I know you're going to see the negative in the news, and some of it looks pretty bad, and people have a right to be upset. But in general, you're not going to see all the good things. You're not going to see the guy we talked down out of dropping a gun. You're never going to see that. We've done that behind a shield multiple times. And people need to know that if the person's with a gun and they're suicidal, they could turn that on you in a second. So you're not going to negotiate with a man with a gun very long. If you're behind cover, you can give them a little, hey, you don't want to do this, drop the gun, look. And we've had it happen. Mm-hmm. So, I'll leave it with this, is that people need to know the majority of men and women are risking their lives out there to bring justice. There's a few that shouldn't be there, and maybe they're going to make some mistakes, and we need to weed them out.
Yeah.
Kevin, you spoke a little bit earlier about lethal force. Have you ever had to use lethal force?
Without going into specifics of the case, yes, I have. It was late in my career, and the person was armed and didn't want to go back to prison, and tried to take a team member with him. had to take immediate action to stop the situation. And in that particular case, the person died. We had another shooting where a person charged with a weapon, deadly force was used, not by me, and the action was stopped. The weapon was taken away, and the person's life was saved. So for my group, there were two. One lived and one died. But the action you take is to stop what's happening in front of you. It's not to kill. We're not shooting to kill. You're trained to shoot to stop.
I wanted that to be like, it's not shoot to kill. It's, protecting.
Right.
You're protecting yourself. You're protecting your team. This isn't malicious. Yeah. But like you said, there's also that other end of the spectrum. But you're like, you guys get too much of a bad rap. You don't get, right now you guys get a lot of, there's been, a
lot of heat.
A lot of heat lately. But
It's been a few years now.
But at the end, like you said, they don't show the guy, you guys talking down with a gun to his head.
Yeah.
And maybe we should see more of that. But everybody loves that other stuff.
Has anything you ever seen on the job unhinged you?
Probably the biggest thing that tugs at your heartstrings is the little kids, the innocent kids in some of these environments that they shouldn't have to grow up in. I can remember, and I always talk to these kids. Look, we might have just arrested their uncle, their brother, their dad, in some instances their mom, and I always take the time to talk to them and say, "Hey, buddy, are you okay? Is that your trophy over there in the corner? What sport did you play? Hey, I played that too." Try to develop some sort of take that fear out of it. You come with your Kevlar on and you have your weapons out for most of our targets. Our weapons are out. And they see that and they're traumatized by that. And I don't want them to, maybe their families told them police are there to harm them. And I get it. And I try to tell them, you have nothing to be afraid of with this team. We're here to help. We're here to help the person that harmed somebody down the street. And so the toughest thing is when you see them in an environment when maybe mom's drinking and drugging and maybe dad's incarcerated or not around. There's not a lot of books in the house. How much food's in the refrigerator. But for the grace of God, goes me, right? So we're just lucky. I think many of us that we didn't have to grow up in poverty, like so many of these.
So that unhinges you.
These people, that really does. Who wants to see a child, an innocent child, that has no choice in a situation where they have to experience people with guns coming in their house, and they're living in conditions that, and we do call social services. We do intervene when we see neglected children, and try to help them. But in many cases, it's not much better than the environment they're living in.
So, Kevin, can you tell us about a time you had to orchestrate a symphony to catch a career criminal?
I referred earlier to the Lorton prison escapes when the prison was open, D.C. prison in Lorton. It's March 6th of 1995. There was an escape from the Occoquan facility, which was a high-security facility in Lorton, Virginia. I responded to the prison after the escape, discovered the escapee was Ronald Ali Jennings, Sr. What made him different than many of the other escapes, this was over the wall, over the fence escape, under gunfire. He evaded Fairfax County law enforcement response, planes, dogs, swam the Occoquan River on a cold morning and got away. So
Jesus Christ, dude.
Swam a cold river?
March 6th, early morning. That morning was just cold, 1995. Could probably look up the temperature, but as I mentioned earlier, I caught all the ones that I targeted, and later he told me that he swam that river and that it woke him up. It was pretty brutal. and then he climbed a tree, almost hypothermic, and was able to evade the initial law enforcement response till they left. And he was able to make good his escape.
So real quick, what did Ronald Jennings look like?
This was a in shape. He was from, if I recall, Prince George's County, Maryland. He was a specimen, extremely good physical shape, and the reason
He's
stated,
what we call a stud.
Yeah.
well, I mean, he was.
Good-looking cat.
Yeah.
Look, I take pride in my work. This guy took pride in his work. He escaped 3 times under gunfire in his career, and that had earned my respect
Holy shit.
immediately. This is a guy who
He doesn't get shook.
probably never should have been in that facility. When he was
Because, like you said, he was minimum security. A guy like that shouldn't be in minimum.
yeah, he was an armed robber. That's what he did. He wasn't afraid to shoot at the police. In '75, he had shot a police officer, and they arrested him. He escaped within a handful of months from that youth facility. He was apprehended, and it wasn't much longer when he was in the federal system. He escaped again under gunfire on that one.
When you say under gunfire, I mean people were
Guards.
shooting at him.
Guards were shooting at him.
Like people, like he didn't
Yeah.
just escape like in the midnight, like out into the darkness. He was having people shoot at him. And
No.
he still, Jesus Christ.
He didn't get out in the trash truck, and I've had those.
Yeah.
I've had those where I've had them where they've worn correctional officers' jackets that they stole and walked out of minimum security. I've had them go out in a trash truck. This was over the fence, and the second time after he escaped, he was arrested up in Pittsburgh in the commission of another robbery, if I recall. He was put in the feds for another 14 years with 2 escapes under his belt, shooting a police officer, and they put him in to the Lorton Reformatory, where it took him.
Which is the sieve where you were catching all these fugitives.
At
that
the
were
time,
escaping from.
it was just that
Overpopulation.
particular facility he should never have been in.
Yeah.
Because he did pull-ups, push-ups. Every day of his incarcerated life was spent trying to figure out how to get out. And he succeeded in March of '95 after being there only a couple of years.
So you think he'd been plotting since day one?
They told me he did. Yeah, told me he did.
Wow.
I mean, that would make sense as to why he did it 3 times.
So he's no gangland trigger. He's sharp.
The guy,
He's not a rookie. Yeah.
no, he was old school. He was bad. I mean, he was just he earned the respect of all the other, inmates. I mean, who escapes 3 times,
Nobody
right?
fucked with him.
I doubt it. No, I doubt it.
Not unless you wanted to lose what was yours.
Yeah, so it took a great deal of physical prowess for him to clear. I believe he jumped off of a rooftop over a fence of razor wire, rolled, got up over a second fence.
kidding me?
No,
While gunfire was raining down on him.
well, the particular correctional officer I interviewed after the fact, we were concerned about a conspiracy because he did escape fairly close to that officer's tower. There was no criminal intent. Might have been a little negligence on that officer's part. Wasn't paying full-time attention to the escape.
Because who is escaping from prison?
Yeah, I mean, I
How
think
often is this happening?
that shot might have been a little bit after the fact. But we can joke about him being a good criminal, and he was. It unfortunately became more tragic while he was out there. So, as my most challenging escape case, I was the case agent on it. I worked with a team of guys that I worked my whole career with, and we worked together to. We looked at every piece of history, every inmate jacket that the guy had, every disciplinary file, every visitor he had, every phone call, his wife, who did he escape with in the past?
Right.
Where was he caught in the past? We compiled all this together, phone tapes, looked at who picked him up? Right? You just don't escape and walk back to D.C. from Lorton, Virginia. So we started focusing on the people he'd been incarcerated with. We developed somebody that talked to him quite a bit, somebody that had been paroled prior to Jennings, and who was younger and looked up to Jennings. And we started watching him. I suspected he was the getaway driver. Pulled some, pulled his phone toll records, right? This is old school. Back in 95, pulled the Verizon phone records, and just on a whim, and lo and behold, there's a collect call in the wee hours of the morning for about 30 seconds in duration from a payphone a couple miles from the prison.
The year of the payphone.
So right, so that's all.
Shout out to payphones.
That's circumstantial evidence, right? But it helps us focus on him.
Yeah, get closer.
So over the next few months, we used everything. We interviewed associates. We interviewed the would-be getaway driver. Nobody would give anything up on this guy.
Nobody's snitching on Jennings, bro.
It just didn't happen. But we, he had earned his respect over the years.
Credit.
So we did some things over time. There was the getaway driver had a black SUV. We don't know if he used that on the escape. There was no video around, but we just knew he had. When we interviewed him, he showed up in that. May 23rd. Well, we had aired him on America's Most Wanted with John Walsh in April. And we got no useful tips from the show, but they did air him for us. Based on his criminal history, he was a no-brainer to feature on that show. Unfortunately, we get a lot of good tips on our cases we feature on there, but this particular one didn't work out. Unfortunately, May 23rd, up in Oxon Hill, Maryland, a Brinks truck was robbed. One of the guards was executed, gave the money up, had his hands in the air. A male in a suit pulls a gun, shoots a round into the bank window. I don't know why to this day. The Brinks guard's name was Jimmy Hill. I always remember the victims in this case, and this is what drove us in this case. Jimmy Hill probably wasn't making $8 an hour guarding that money, gave it up, did what he was supposed to do, and he gets gunned down. The suspect walks up, removes his revolver, Jimmy's revolver, from his holster, and then proceeds to shoot 2 more times into his lower body and the groin area, and straight out execution. Didn't have to be done.
Malicious.
Oh,
was he dead after the fact that he did that?
The guard died on the scene. 4 individuals were involved. There was over $500,000 stolen out of the back of this Brinks truck.
Whoa.
It was a minivan that had been stolen that they used to do the robbery. A postal inspector who was off duty and was carrying his weapon ran to the scene and was able to shoot the fleeing van and put a round or 2 in it, basically marking.
Oh, he tagged it.
Marking the vehicle. Yeah. I'm sure he's trying to hit him, but we later found out he didn't. But the interesting thing about that is there was a man a couple miles away that was having coffee on his porch in Maryland, and he saw a black SUV idling in his cul-de-sac. Thought that was odd. He goes in to get some more coffee. Comes out, the black SUV's gone, and there's the shot-up minivan outside his house. So he hasn't heard that the Brinks robbery murder had just gone down.
He saw something suspicious.
He called it in, and PG County Police responded, seized that vehicle. They determined that it was stolen. They found some evidence in it, some masks. I think some might have been some other evidence. I don't recall now, but with the description from the citizen, there was a large SUV.
Just real quick, how tall was he?
I believe he was about 6'1". 6'1", 180 maybe.
6 foot. But he was extremely fit, so
extremely muscular, no fat on him.
So
0%. 0%. Worked out every day in the rec yard, every day in prison. and kept himself in incredible shape. So with the description from the citizen on the SUV, they must have heard the broadcast to the public on the radio because they burned that SUV. So that SUV was found torched in Maryland. We had no idea.
They burned the car?
They realized, see,
Their getaway car.
this is an elaborate setup. You steal a vehicle to do your dirty work, and you have a switch car.
Yeah.
The switch car happened to be registered to somebody, and that somebody happened to be my getaway driver.
Oh.
And the only reason we know is not that they called me. We called when we heard that there was a black SUV that had burned, and we said, by the way, did you find who that was registered to? And they said, hold on a minute. They came back, gave me the name, and that was my guy. So I told them
The getaway driver that had helped Jennings escape.
that was the vehicle that was used in that Brinks.
That was their dump car.
Their switch car was the vehicle he showed up to when we interviewed him early on about the escape. Same vehicle.
Whoa.
What a
So,
fool.
it's they probably never expected that we were going to catch on to that PG County was going to catch on to the
Well,
boat.
yeah, because it's disparate, right? They're located in different. They're counting on that not
Right.
intersecting.
Yeah, they drive away in that black SUV, and everybody be looking for that minivan. So, when we made the connection, we asked PG County Homicide, "Hey, do you know who your shooter is?" And they said no, and we said, "Well, we think we do. His name's going to be Ronald Jennings. He's an escapee from Lorton Reformatory, and
At this point, how long he had been on the run? How long was he on the run?
escaped on March 6th, and that was May 23rd. So a little over 2 months. We stepped up our investigation on the getaway driver. Ironically, I ran his record. He was arrested the night of the Brinks robbery that happened in the morning. He was arrested later that evening, illegal possession of a firearm. He was arrested, booked, and he bonded himself out with, I believe, $2,000 in Brinks money. It's to this day, I believe. I'll never know that, but
Wow.
he bonded out with cash in hindsight.
Money he stole.
In hindsight, I believe it was. So knowing that he had a felony,
This guy he didn't give a fuck, dude.
This dude doesn't give a fuck at all.
Like, at all.
he was,
He's a gangland trigger.
Yeah.
well, he had a felony conviction or two himself. So I went to the U.S. Attorney's Office and ATF, and we charged him with felon possession of a firearm federally, which gave me a reason to go after him. We then got with PG County Homicide, explained what we knew about our escapee, suspected killer, and our getaway driver, suspected getaway driver, and the ringleader of this Brinks robbery. We got together. We got some search warrants for the getaway driver's house and an arrest warrant for the getaway driver. We arrested him. He had a gun on him. We arrested him at a business that he had. It was basically a vehicle business. We think it was a chop shop, but got another weapon there in the house. PG County got 10 weapons in the attic, pistols, revolvers, shotguns, assault rifles, silencers, I believe, ballistic vests, two-way radios. This was an organized group.
These guys are good.
These
These are
weren't
the
just
fucking bank robbers from Heat.
These are the bank robbers. No, these are the bank robbers from the town.
The town, yeah. I mean,
yeah. They
Did you find masks and shit?
well, they had masks that he said that they left
In the car.
In the car.
Wow. Dude, this is like real life, like fucking the town.
So what? Just to quickly summarize what we've got so far, we have an escaped convict named Ronald Jennings who escaped Lorton Reformatory, and he escaped through the Occoquan River, swam it. He was picked up by a getaway driver, disappeared into the ether, assembled a posse of outlaws, of other criminals. He's a career criminal. He is in some might call him, I don't know about criminal mastermind, but he definitely knows his way around.
He's definitely done it.
He
before.
assembles a league of people to help him pull off a heist. one that he's maybe been researching, or one of his other members of his gang has been researching for a while, and they've done quite a bit of groundwork on. They assemble a posse and they rob a Brinks truck for $500,000. It was no just like, hey, let's rob this liquor store. It was
This was calculated.
It's pinpointed.
Yep.
And then they carried out a cold-blooded murder during this heist of $500,000. Now, not all criminals are created equal, and one of them is very, very sloppy. He's sort of the loose cannon. He's the one that blows up your spot. He runs hot. He buys nice shit. He walks around with heat. What some might term a fuckboy. And so now that you guys have caught on to him and you were able to charge him.
Well, no. How'd you get him?
So what? To your point, most of that's correct. We think Jennings was the muscle. He was the brawn and the
Not
hot-headed,
necessarily the brains.
the quick on the trigger, right? And I think
He was the hothead. He was like the right-hand man.
our getaway driver orchestrated this, and he was obviously upset that Jennings executed that guard. That wasn't in the plan.
Oh,
Was never in the plan. That was something that he just did.
On his own.
I believe that to this day, and there were reasons for it.
did he say that?
He never talked about the escape. I'll take you through what happened after this. After we do the search warrant,
Go ahead.
we arrest the getaway driver federally. He's being interviewed by PG County Homicide. We get all the evidence out of the house. One of our guys had the wherewithal, Marty is his first name, to further go through the evidence with a fine-tooth comb. And if you remember in the 80s and 90s, they had fanny packs everybody was wearing. I think they're coming back now. There was a fanny pack.
Dave, you wore a fanny pack not too long ago.
It's amazing.
Hey,
I love it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie, I had one early in my career. Not the most tactical thing to carry a gun in, but it conceals it. Marty found in one of the bags of evidence a fanny pack. He opens up the fanny pack. In the fanny pack is a Blockbuster video card from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with a picture of our escapee on it and the name Curtis Freeman. Our escapee with the name of Curtis Freeman in this fanny pack.
Free man.
There is a birth certificate in the name of Curtis Freeman. We now know the name our guy's using. We also know that he messed up, left his fanny pack. He's up in Pittsburgh again. Remember, he was captured there after his second escape. We start focusing. We had a person of interest in Pittsburgh that we had looked at. We had a couple accordions of files on this case. Every individual that Jennings had known, everybody that he'd known. And we had identified one person at a particular apartment in Pittsburgh, in sort of a low-income housing unit up in Pittsburgh. The marshals in Pittsburgh had done a little, watching up there, didn't see anything in advance, so we didn't think much of it. Now when I see we've got a Blockbuster video card.
You mean to tell me that Ronald Jennings' downfall was he left a Blockbuster card at his fanny pack?
It was
buddy.
It was a big mistake, and I think there was also a letter that he had left post-escape, prior to the Brinks robbery. Jennings had written it from Pittsburgh to the getaway driver in Maryland, mailed it through the U.S. mail. Getaway driver never threw it away, but that letter said, "Hey, I'm up here in Pittsburgh. I'm running low on the initial money I had. If you could set up a big money caper, I'll come down and participate."
Big money caper. Those were his words?
Those were his words.
You can't write this shit, dude. Like, you can't, like...
big money caper. Wow, dude.
It was your heartbeat, and you were like, "We got him."
Well, yeah, and again, just a tribute to I was the case
All the local
agent, but
and all
Marty
those guys,
took
dude.
Marty went through and found that. That's what I.
Hey,
You know, he
out
did what
to
he
Marty.
was supposed to do.
Shout out
So-
to big money capers.
yeah.
Well, we
Blockbuster.
And
Jesus.
Blockbuster. Jesus.
well armed with that, we at this point we had asked to make him a top 15 in the U.S. Marshal Service because he had, he had elevated himself to that level. So we, with that, we were allowed to get a little more media involvement. We were able to put $25,000 reward out. We were able to. We still had no real hits on this case.
But you knew-
But once we found that information, we were up to Pittsburgh the next day. So the four of us from the task force, myself, Marty, Rob, and Bill, just jumped into a couple rental cars and rolled up to Pittsburgh. Met with the marshal's office up there. Explained, listen, we got a high risk fugitive investigation here. You could help us out. We got a plan together. We tried to watch the associate in the apartment building. We were able to identify that person. We were also able to find that person bought 2 vehicles in cash the same day of the Brinks
Bang.
murder robbery. So what we think happened was, and also in the search warrant, we found a Greyhound ticket. Jennings came down from Pittsburgh to D.C., did the robbery, the murder, took his cut of the money, took another, I believe it was an Amtrak ride back up, and then went and bought 2 vehicles with cash that he just
In Pittsburgh?
with blood money right in Pittsburgh. So
Same day of murdering.
I often thought about that used car salesman getting let me reach in my duffel bag and hand you stacks of cash for 2 vehicles.
I just bought a car today, almost from a used car salesman, and they'll take just about anything.
Yeah.
They'll take war money,
Yeah.
oil money, blood money,
It doesn't matter.
as long as
Crack
it's
money,
as long as
drug
it's currency,
money.
dude. As long as I can,
Well,
as
it's,
long as
money.
it can be used.
Well, the interesting thing that we were looking for
Solid
is,
dudes.
of
Used
course,
car salesman.
both of the vehicles were registered. In effect, he got one for himself and one for his friend, his roommate. And both of them,
Curtis Freeman.
Curtis Freeman got a vehicle for his roommate. I think they bought 2 bicycles the same day. But what I remember about the registrations on those vehicles is their Pennsylvania tags. The first 3 letters were ATF on both of them, and the last 4 were sequential. So whatever one was one off. So we were looking for those vehicles when we were up there. We also took Rob, and our idea was to put him in the Blockbuster video store as an undercover capacity as an employee. The blue Oxford, the name tag.
Shut up. You were going to put a U.S. Marshal undercover as a Blockbuster employee?
We did. But
No, we did.
we did, and unfortunately, we were truthful with the manager. And a little funny note: Rob was playing the new trainee. We were out doing surveillance. The manager says, one of the coworkers says, "Hey, you're new here." As Rob tells it, "You're new here." Yeah, I just transferred from across town. Which store? The one up. Oh, that store? Yeah, that store. I worked there. I never saw you. And he's like,
Oh, you're blowing up.
just
my
shut
spot,
up.
dude.
Just-
Yeah,
he's
just shut up.
There might have been an explicative in there as he tells the story later. But but he did his job. We were, what's of note is the manager told us Ronald Jennings came in under that assumed name every day since he landed in Pittsburgh. He was renting 3 movies a day. This guy's been incarcerated most of his adult life.
He needs to catch up on movies.
He caught up Menace to Society, everything you could watch,
Oh,
every
wow.
gangster film.
Wow.
So we knew he'd be returning and picking up. So that was our
Loved him some movies, dude.
Cinema's important.
the manager said
A real criminal. Needs his
eventually-
movies, dude.
he didn't like the plan. Hey, I don't want to shoot out up in our store, and I
He's like,
understand.
that's too Blockbuster for me. You hear me? For a
Well,
shootout to happen here is
good one,
too.
Dave. That's
Thank
funny.
you.
That's a good one.
Thank
Not
you guys.
bad.
I'll be here till I get a new job.
Yeah. Damn.
Well, we had to come up with a plan B because they kicked us out. And as we're regrouping, I don't know where I am in Pittsburgh. I see an SUV go down the road with ATF tags. I said, gotta be.
Shut up.
We all scramble.
Serendipity.
He drove right by the Blockbuster, went to a grocery store before everybody could sort of get set up. We identify both of them getting back into the car with groceries.
Right now, are your balls tingling? Like, what's going on right there? You got to be like whole.
Well, just I know you're making light of it, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's
Well, we get that the stakes are high. Somebody's been murdered.
right.
Somebody's been murdered. This is a bad dude.
Right. I mean,
Be
that's
after him if this what.
this is the moment we work, for from March to July, right? Is it
Yeah.
March to July? And we're here, and again, we're bringing justice for Jimmy Hill, who didn't have to die in this whole thing. And so, yeah, you're carrying that with you. You're like, this is the worst of the worst we've ever chased, and we are now looking at him in a parking lot in Pittsburgh, getting into a car in the passenger seat. The driver is the resident of the apartment. Before we can develop a plan, they're driving away. We're doing a mobile car surveillance of them. We're radioing out where everybody's turning. And anybody in law enforcement will tell you when you've done mobile surveillance, you always think you're burned, right? Even if they have no clue you're behind them. This was no different on this one. I'm in the second car with a Pittsburgh deputy marshal driving. The driver makes an illegal left. One of the most wanted men in America is in a car with an illegal left turn, and then a right, and then a left. And you're supposed to, the number 2 car is supposed to give up the position, so you bring a new car in behind him. My driver turned right in behind him. I, at that point, started sliding down in the seat in case he starts throwing rounds back. That's what we were all thinking. He's gonna
start squeezing.
It's gonna be a higher. They're on to us. They know what's going on.
Yeah.
So as we've
been made,
we were communicating on how the car stops right by a basketball court. Jennings steps out with a basketball. We had no idea. They had no idea that we were behind them. They were just going to play hoops.
Oh, Jesus.
So a side story is that Marty opens the rental car door out. We're all bailing out to go get him. Let's go. And the vehicle I'm in takes the door off of the rental car that Marty's driving. As we're making the approach, everybody gets tunnel vision. The driver door comes flying off the hinges. Boom, bang, bang, bang down the street. Driver looks back at us. Jennings looks back at us. We just bail and run. And Jennings freezes at the car, and I've got him up against the car. Gun out. A couple of the other guys hook him up. He doesn't give us an issue. I said, hey, take him back to federal courthouse.
Kevin, your
Not a word.
heart has got to be shredding out of your
dude.
chest,
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah.
You've been chasing this guy.
He killed somebody in
You've
cold
been hunting
blood.
him like he is a fugitive. He escaped from prison and pulled off
Yeah.
to just spot him. You're in this. You're in Pennsylvania. You know where the fuck you are, and you're like, that's an SUV, ATF, and it's just like,
Bang.
Yeah.
go.
A few of us saw it at the same time, but yeah, it's
Just trying to infiltrate a Blockbuster.
you give up.
No holds barred, dude.
Dude.
In hindsight, we give up the element of surprise when you're moving in and you loudly knock a door off one of your cars. But for a while, we kept that car. We took that car back to D.C. and put it up on the wall in the D.C. Joint Fugitive Task Force. I think insurance paid for it. But we asked.
Armed?
We asked if we could have that door, but and they let us. No, they weren't armed, and
He was legit trying to ball. He was just trying to get his sweat on.
that's all he was doing.
Jennings was like, I don't want to bring my piece with me. I just want to ball.
I just want to get a sweat on.
Yeah, I just want to get my sweat
Oh, wait, hold on. U.S. Marshals are rolling up.
Psych. Crazy motherfucker Kevin Donnelly's out to get me.
He's been hunting.
He's traveled far.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, once we had him in handcuffs, he didn't say a word. Take him to federal courthouse on the escape warrant. He hasn't even been charged in anything to do with the robbery. Nobody has. I started talking to the driver. I said, hey, listen, he's noticeably shaking and screaming and, what's going on? And I said, hey, I knew his name. I asked him his name. He told me. I said, what's his name? He said, Curtis. I said, what's his last name? He said, Freeman. He says, oh, my God, what did he do? What did he do? I said, well, he's an escapee from a D.C. prison, and he's killed a Brinks guard, and his name is Ronald Jennings. He falls, basically faints in the middle of the street in front of us, and then he gets his composure together, and we explain, hey, look, you're fine. We're going to believe you didn't know anything about this. And he admits, he says, listen, I'm not going to lie. I had no idea. He said, I thought he was just a drug dealer. He showed up here with money. Who am I not to enjoy some of it?
Right.
They did that. But he told me at that point, he goes, oh, my God. I said, does he have a gun? Does he have any money? Yes. He says he has a safe in our closet. He's got a whole bunch of money in there and at least one gun. I said, okay. And then he says, oh, my God. I said, what? He says, he watches America's Most Wanted every weekend. If he'd had seen himself on there, I might not be here right now. So,
whoa.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
He was deathly afraid. So he was cooperative. We got a search warrant out of an abundance of caution for the apartment, for the safe. We found a .357 Magnum with 6 rounds in it in the safe and $108,000 in cash. I think he had $106,000 in the safe. Again, in the duffel bag that was still, he probably rode up with the cash with. We found $2,000 in the bottom of the bag that he never shook out. So we had about $108,000. That weapon would end up being one of the murder weapons. I forget if it was the guards or the one he brought with him. We only found the one. We produced him on the escape case. We got him back to Virginia. We ended up the end of the story in the case was that I was interviewing him. I was taking handwriting exemplars from him. This was a few months later, maybe October of '95. I was taking his fingerprints, I believe, and handwriting exemplars just to use against the note that we found to sort of show this whole conspiracy. He'd mailed a letter trying to set up a bank heist so that we could use that letter as evidence. But during the processing and taking of his handwriting exemplars, he told me he had converted to Islam while he was incarcerated. And he said, Allah controls everything in my life. And I said, he can't control the fact that we caught you in Pittsburgh and the state of Maryland's going to execute you for killing that guard. By the way, his name was Jimmy Hill, and he had a family. And he looked at me and he said, I can explain both of those things. And he said, I didn't run because you got me on a basketball court. There were kids playing. You might have harmed one of the kids. And the second thing is, they'll never get me to the chair. And I said, 100% thinking he's talking about an escape. I said, if you think you're going to escape a fourth time, it's not going to happen. You're not going back to any facility that's going to allow that. So we had our, we separated. I went back to the office. Later that night, I got a call from the facility that we housed him in the middle of the night, letting us know that he'd hanged himself and killed himself that night.
He's not going back to the chair.
Well, I never...
You interpreted it as, I'm just going to escape.
And listen, I want to make...
You guys can't hold me down.
I want to make this clear. Now, what Ronald Jennings did, allegedly did, throughout his life, that's on him. He had a family. He had a mother. People care about him. And had I known that was his intention, I would have put things in place with the facility to have a watch on him and to prevent that. Because he has value, and that's our job, is if we suspect that's what... He had never had any indication of suicide.
To himself.
So, I don't... if I could have prevented that, and we could have, gone through with our cases and convicted him, that would have been the end of that. But that was an unfortunate choice by him. He did leave a note exonerating the guards, saying, by the way, they didn't do this to me. They treated me well. This was on me. So that's how that case ended up. We did convict the getaway driver in the Brinks robbery murder, and also the conspiracy to assist an escape.
Is he still doing time?
He's serving 100 years in Maryland Department of Corrections.
Wow.
With the escape detainer on
Jesus
on top.
Kevin, thank you so much for sharing that story and what we would deem as an intangible adventure with us that sort of encapsulates all the skills and abilities that your career must inhabit to make the job possible. Really just really cool stuff, man.
I mean,
it's mind-boggling.
But you are like a detective,
but heading up, getting the collaboration,
Yeah, right. I mean,
instead of that competition.
Like you keep saying,
like you said, it's a collaborative effort.
That you're able to use the local police, the deputies, the sheriffs,
and you're just one of the maestros that helps bring that together. Yeah, you orchestrate it, and
it's impressive.
Very
it really
cool.
is impressive.
Every one of these people you look for there's a criminal investigation into the crime, right? Proving that somebody did or didn't do it.
Right.
And then there's a fugitive investigation, the steps you take to find somebody that doesn't want to be found, and maybe catch them with evidence that's useful in a crime. We're not doing warrant service. We're not knocking doors and grabbing bodies. We're holding the scene. We see a gun under a bed in plain view. We're going to hold it for search warrants so they can match the ballistics up that weapon to that murder, maybe, or another murder.
Yeah.
So we're very careful about preservation of evidence. So yes, there's many times an in-depth fugitive investigation that these men and women are doing, and it's teamwork. It's not just the U.S. Marshal Service; it's our state and local partners that are a part of this, and everybody works around the clock to go after one of these cases and try to bring justice to the family. And I think in this case, it's unfortunate that the suspect ended it the way he did, but I also like to think that the family of Jimmy Hill was very appreciative for at least somebody going out and bringing that
Closure.
That evil to an end.
Do you believe in God?
I do, yeah. I'm a man of faith, and I just look outside, and I like to hunt, fish, get outside. I think that's not all happening by accident, and I think that whatever your faith is, I keep it to myself, my family, but I certainly do believe in God, and I believe that this kind of job for men and women that do it is a way to bring justice. It's almost like, as people say, you're doing God's work. You're bringing justice to people, and they pay you to go do it. I mean, what better job could there be?
That's it.
Guys, this has been a dynamite time, but all good things must come to an end, and our show is no different. Kevin, thank you for joining us today. And guys and girls, as always, thank you for listening.
All right, guys. Amazing episode. Everyone, stay frosty, stay sharp, but most importantly, stay intangible.
This show was written and produced by David McFarland and Tyler Skidge. Special thanks to our editor, Charlie Ross. If you want to stay in the loop and not miss out on when the next adventure is happening, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Intangible Adventures, and subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you have an extra moment, please rate us and review us. We would love to hear your feedback about what you think about our show. You can also email us directly at secretrecipe@intangibleadventures.com. As always, thank you for joining us on our latest Intangible Adventures, and we'll see you guys next time.